in the Berkshire, so that together we can go forward. And I would ask the council to agree with this very much. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this matter? Okay, members, I'll take this to the vote. Those in favour? That motion is carried. So, the Road President Act Trade Policy Statement. Who's proposing that? Stuart Monroe. And have you a second, Stuart? Stuart Monroe. Okay, would you like to speak on it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Briefly, I can speak. The report is as laid out in the agenda, and the Localism Act requires us, in order to produce and to be approved, a pay and policy statement annually. I was a member of the Personnel Board that reviewed this pay policy, and the Personnel Board noted that while there had been a slight increase to senior management pay, the gap was narrowing due to the higher increases at the bottom end of the pay scale as a result of the national minimum wage increases, and therefore we unanimously approved it.
Only a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor, just that for some reason the director's pay wasn't added into this document. We're not too sure why. There's no sinister reason. It is all very transparent, but it will be added in.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this?
Thank you. We're going to be abstaining on this. We thought that as it is a pay policy statement, we should include something on any gender imbalance and any monitoring and reporting of gender imbalance. And we couldn't see that, so for future. It wasn't that. In that case, apologies. The other thing it didn't include was with the ratios. The ratios are presented in isolation, and we would like a better sense of which way those ratios are moving. I appreciate the ratios are within those outlined by the Hudson report, but those figures in isolation don't.
There was a whole point.
Okay, would you use your right to reply to that?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, all of that detail was there, but I think if you can't get it, let me know and I'll give you a full report.
Okay. No other members wishing to speak on this matter? Let's take it to the vote. Those in favour? Carried. Okay, 29. Sorry, 28. Changes to the Constitution. Chris Bowery. Have you a second with Chris?
I think Councillor Smith sees.
Chris Smith.
Okay, these are a series of recommendations from the Constitution Review Working Group. When I first draw your attention to page 89, there's a clerical error. The recommendations pertaining to Section 8 have not been included in the list of recommendations on page 87. So it comes to the votes and make sure that you're voting for that one as well. With reference to the Planning Committee terms of reference, this was a request from the Chairman of the Planning Committee and Executive Member for Planning and Enforcement to reduce the time after the notification of a Planning Committee during which members of the Council can list the planning application, which means that the recommendation will be offered as much as they wish it to be, then it goes to the Planning Committee to be determined. We have consulted with town and parish councils on this, and they seem to be happy with it. There is a convention that if parish and town councils request it, then the period of consultation can be extended, and that will still pertain. The period is reducing from 28 days to 21. The other main section was requested by Leader of the Opposition, which was to increase the time for members' questions at Council under notice from 20 minutes to 30 minutes. Obviously, there is quite a lot of discussion at the moment about time generally in council meetings, so we'll have to see how that goes. If that is passed, then I think when we actually come on to members' questions under notice later in the meeting, that will be another 10 minutes. The rest of the proposals, I think, can be described as a tidying up exercise. Even though they are somewhat long, I don't think they are too controversial. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Chris, would you like to speak?
Only to say I agree with the proposals and the lengthening of the time for member questions is on our agenda to review later on in the year once we've had a couple of extra council meetings with that length of time, just to see if there are any further improvements or changes required.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Oh, sorry.
Hand up, please. Right, okay. Terry Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the 30 minutes is a step in the right direction, but having said that, I would have minded it being for all meetings, but that can be something to be looked at in the future. On page 30, there's a reference to act as the primary press spokesman on all matters related to da-di-da-di-da-di-da-da, and it crosses out 21st Century Council, Internal Services and Human Resources. It's a two-part question. Who's responsible for these three services that are crossed out here, or is Century 21 dead?
Yes, I've got two comments. I was present at the meeting on the 30 minutes extension. I'm happy that we feel that's a step in the right direction. However, on the planning aspect, what was mentioned is that at the moment, when you list a planning application, it says it takes 5 days for it to come on. It was mentioned at the meeting that they were going to be updating the system, and I think the August the 13th was mentioned as the date the new service was in. And I thought that a meeting agreed that they would do that subject to the new system being in place before we moved to 21 working days. And I thought that because it wasn't in the agenda to recommend, there was an issue waiting to see whether the new system worked. So I would just like clarification on that, please.
Can I just remember all the questions? Maybe those are the questions, please. Any problem?
Thank you. We support all of the proposals except for the change in planning days, which we think should stay at 28. So we're just wondering, can we have two votes, one on everything except for planning, as you'd like to vote against that?
Yes, I'm sure you can.
I was quite pleased to see that the planning element was missing from this, because that was the one bit at that meeting that I was not happy about because of what Lindsay said. It takes several days before a planning application is hit the website, so we can't see what's going on. And I think until that's fixed, we're not ready to drop the length to 21 days.
Thank you.
I'm not sure about Councillor Carroll's question, but I'll find out. The August 13th date is correct. I'm looking at Councillor Weeks. What do I like to speak? When we implemented before then, but we're confident that it will by August 13th take place.
Thank you very much. What we can do here, we can vote on section 1 to 6 and then vote on section 7 separately. So if we could see a vote for section 1 to 6, all those in favour? That is carried. All those voting for section 7? That is also carried. Thank you very much. Okay. It's still carried. Would you want to like to vote against it? Yes. Okay. Those against? Thank you.
No, I'm very good.
Okay. Now we're moving on to number 29, which is stated by the leader. Any deputy members? That's 20 minutes. You have 5 minutes in which to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start by thanking you very much indeed for setting up a new awards scheme for the borough to recognise the contribution of the many members of our community, both in terms of adults and children, who make such a tremendous contribution throughout the borough. Before I move on to the main theme of my speech tonight, I need to inform the Council that I've appointed Councillor Anthony Pollock to the Executive Member for Highways and Transport, which is probably already fairly obvious, and also Councillor David Chopping as his deputy. Both members bring a wealth of experience to their roles, and I'm looking forward to working with them over this coming year. I've stood before you many times, as have previous leaders and executive members, to tell you that the climate for local government means that we cannot continue to do the things that we always have. We've spoken frequently of the need to change how we do things in order to maintain a council that is sustainable and fit for the future. Talk is very easy though. At the last meeting, I spoke about the council plan, a document that will set out our priorities, our values, and a roadmap as an organisation for the coming years. The plan engagement document was meant to go to the executive this month, but I've insisted that this time is set aside to allow the opposition members to feed into it before it goes out to a wider audience. So time will be allowed for you to contribute to it over the next coming month. In September, we will begin a consultation with the public, and it will be a draft plan before engaging with stakeholders and partners later in the year. This is everyone's opportunity to help shape the future direction of travel. We will be asking the community and stakeholders to say whether they agree with the priorities and values that we have set under this authority. But there is another and more vital point. We will be seeking to have a dialogue about a broader agenda, one about a holistic approach to the community and how the public sector, business and the voluntary sector can come together to achieve a joint vision. Local government no longer holds all of the cards. Where there is a problem, the council may not necessarily be the best one and the best person to be able to produce a solution. Where before we were providers, we now need to be able to take the transition to be enablers too. Enabling residents to provide solutions where they want to and where they can. Encouraging residents to do more to look after each other and with a wealth of other and normally much better suited resources closer to home. To expect the state to solve all of society's problems is to abdicate our moral responsibility to our neighbours and to our community. Part of this is about changing culture and places barriers in front of residents who want to do more and to take on additional responsibility. But we must keep people safe and ensure a decent audit trail too. But too often has bureaucracy and health and safety been used in the wrong place and the wrong time to prevent someone doing something. Other public sector organisations, businesses, charities, the voluntary sector, community groups and individuals can together build a society we aspire to see and want to be part of. The council plan engagement will work with residents, organisations and voluntary sectors to begin a conversation about what more we can do to enable them to do so that the buck isn't always simply passed back to the council. The council will refocus on being the direct provider of statutory services and act as a support for those who really need it. We will use a commercial and entrepreneurial approach to the priorities that our communities identify. And residents and other organisations will be enabled, where possible, to take on more responsibility to provide those things which we, the council, are simply no longer able to do alone. Democracy isn't passive. It's not simply casting a vote in an election and then complaining about what politicians do. We have to create an active society where people do and don't simply have it done to them, where residents both shape the decisions and play a role in delivering the outcomes that our community wants, where local people play a leading and active role in services and shape their direction. All this will not be achieved in the next year. It may not even be achieved in the next 5 years. It is work of years, engaging and working differently with our whole community. We believe in one community conservatism that empowers our residents and places them at the centre of decision making. It is time for us to show that we trust our local people to look after our community, look after each other and set the way forward for our whole borough.
Simon Weeks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The main issue I'd like to discuss is a surprise appeal decision that we received about 10 days ago. I think you're all aware that late last year we were able, on the strength of an increased level of build rate across the borough, to have a review of our 5-year land supply, which at that point was a weakness. And that 5-year land supply was reassessed to 6.7 years. And that particular issue was also reviewed by leading council. Parallel with this, or if we go back a little way, a couple of years ago, we refused a planning application to build houses on Sonning Golf Course. And the applicant took that to appeal, and much to our surprise, the appeal was successful. Clearly the appeal was very flawed, so we mounted a judicial review of that, and we were granted by the judge that the appeal should be redetermined by a fresh planning inspector. That was concluded 2 weeks ago, and the inspector, much to everybody's surprise, including the applicant, determined that we did not have a 5-year land supply, in his opinion. We were very shocked to see this, particularly that he hadn't called any of the available evidence, and seemed to question that our assessment of our 6.7-year land supply was something that we'd plucked out of thin air, rather than something that was clearly backed up by written statements from the many large developers across the borough who are delivering at agreed rates. So according to that, this clearly drives a serious coach and horses through our current planning strong position. So we have consulted with our colleagues, and we'll be mounting a further judicial review of this decision. We are grateful, in one sense, that this decision was made at an informal or written hearing, as they're known. Those don't require the highest standard of evidence. Meanwhile, we do have a couple of undetermined appeals that have been heard at public inquiry, and these, of course, require the highest level of evidence and cross-examination, usually by QCs. And obviously, we are hopeful that the outcomes of those undetermined appeals may resurrect this short-term hiatus that we've suffered as a result of this rogue inspector decision. Thank you.
Philip Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to give a brief update on the highways-related works in Wokingham Marketplace and adjoining roads, and an overview on some recent press comments. My first subject to works over the coming week, the lower end of Denmark Street and Langbury Road should reopen for two-way traffic as promised on the evening of the 27th of July. The upper section of Denmark Street is planned to be reopened over the weekend of August 18th and 19th to through traffic. This is in conjunction with the completion of the major part of the marketplace works. There is likely to be some minor snagging works during the following week, and a final deep acid clean and sealing process that will take place over the 5 nights from August 20th. I have every hope that the marketplace will be fully available for use from Saturday, August 25th, cleaned and sealed. Peach Place is very much on target for opening late November, and we have considerable interest in all our units. Elmsfield is also progressing at a pace, with foundations going into place and access points for the new road and car park constructed. Some recent press comments have on a number of occasions tried to link the closures of businesses in the town to the marketplace highways works and town centre regeneration. Both of these businesses, recent examples, the Gig House only this week, Café Rouge's planned closure as well, both of these businesses have had problems nationally, and they have confirmed that those have affected their decisions to close. What is gratifying is the fact that the Gig House ownership changed so rapidly, and Café Rouge have also confirmed that they've sold their Wokingham premises to a solid regional chain who will very much benefit from the works in the town centre, as we've always said. Wokingham's Newmarket town centre is beating the national trend, with many of the companies wanting to move here. I look very much forward to the buoyant end to the year for retailers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We have some more time if any other members of the Julian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just share 3 good news stories with members. I'm pleased to report, and as you will have seen in the national and local press, that we collected 99.5% of council tax in year, which makes us the #1 performing council in the country for the 4th year in succession. This is despite increasing our minimum council tax payment to 20%, which is our hardest debt to collect. Every percentage equates to just under £1 million, so it makes a huge difference to the money available for our vital council services. We also delivered £89 million worth of investment across the borough on transport, infrastructure, regeneration, education, affordable homes and many other assets for the benefit of our community. This level of capital programme investment is almost 5 times higher than it was 4 or 5 years ago, and it was delivered within the overall budget, a testament to our strong financial controls across the capital programme. Our innovative and ambitious 21st Century Council programme delivered on a very stretching savings target of £2 million, which was achieved across the council's support services and senior management posts. This cost reduction makes our services even more efficient. It was achieved with minimal impact on the council's day-to-day business, and it provides us with a strong technological IT platform going forward. It is a reflection of the commitment and capability of our staff and shows that we have a well-managed, credible change management programme in place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Pauline York.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be quick. I have several bits of good news to update the council with. Firstly, Foster's Extra Care in Woodley, a development by the council's wholly owned subsidiary Long Homes, was opened by the Mayor in the middle of June. This is a lovely building, provides 34 spacious one-bedroom apartments for older people, with on-site care provided by Optilis, our council head care company. I was at the opening and was delighted to talk to so many residents who were delighted with their new homes. That's the first bit of news. Secondly, we're progressing our plans for developing Gorse Ride in Finchstead. Officers have held one-to-one meetings with affected council tenants and homeowners on the estate. We're looking to submit the planning application for the redevelopment, which we expect to cost more than £30 million shortly. Having met some of the residents at a recent steering group, I'm very keen to work with them to ensure that we maintain what is a great community whilst providing them with new high-quality homes. Thirdly, I've received a letter from the Chair of Tenants and Landlords Improvement Panel, Steve Bowers. This bears testament to the close working between the council and tenants, and he specifically asked me to read it out of council. He said, on behalf of the involved tenants, I'd like to pass my utmost thanks to Manjit Gill, Councillor Haytham Taylor, Councillor Dolinsky, and the Tenant and Landlord Improvement Panel members and other working borough council managers who have taken the time to speak with us and listen to our views on the 21st Century Council programme to date. In particular, I'd like to thank you all for responding and acting on our thoughts regarding having an assistant director post which acknowledges the importance of housing. As involved tenants, we're very proud of the involvement and strong partnership working we have with Woking Borough Council and look forward to maintaining and enhancing this in future under the new structures. I'd like to add my thanks to Steve, in particular to my predecessor, Councillor Richard Linsky, who's worked really hard since taking on the role to deliver high quality council and affordable housing needed by our communities, and I hope I can do him justice now.
Thank you. Do you think you'll be able to speak after all that praise?
He'll have a go.
I'll have a go. I mean, honestly, I did not know about that, so thank you. Thank you, Steve. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looking at the agenda and the time up there, I doubt that the motion 406 will be debated. If so, I want to take the opportunity now to thank the support I've received from members. I've had some very constructive conversation with our Liberal colleagues and with Councillor Cowan and also with Councillor Croy as well. So thank you for that. As such, I will still be inviting members to join me in a cross-party working group to challenge the funding inconsistencies, lobby and to work with central government for a realistic, workable funding solution for adult social care, particularly here in Woking. As said in my support of the joint DAS appointment, we must provide opportunities to implement new ways of working. A good example of funding inconsistencies is with our DTOC. Now remember what I said what DTOC was. I should test you guys out, but it's a delayed transfer of care, better known as bed blocking. If we were to benchmark our delayed days by 100,000 population for 2017-18, we'd say our closest neighbours, Woking does score well with 54 days delay in comparison to Bracknell Forest of 105 days, Reading 114 days and Windsor and Maidenhead 88 days. Yet at the same time, Bracknell Forest received 1.1 million, Reading 1.6 million and Windsor and Maidenhead 1.35 million, whilst Wokingham only received £112,000 in additional funding. This figure is down from £160,000 from the previous year, whilst our neighbours' funding has on the whole remained the same. We are a high-performing local authority, and as such our Better Care Fund shortlisted for the first wave of graduate status alongside only 6 other local authorities in England. If I were to be critical, I don't think we highlight enough of the good practice that adult social care achieves in Wokingham in helping our communities. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to bring to members' attention the fact that the M4 is going to be subject to a smart motorway conversion. It has to be completed by 2022, because I suspect 2022 is when they're going to start work on Heathrow. I have seen, and I would recommend you all to find a copy, download it and have a look at it, the technical engineering document that sits behind this, and particularly to look at the traffic data. Because without smart motorway, the M4 the M4 eastbound is at 100% by 2022. Even with smart motorway, it's sort of at 90-something%. And to give my colleague Stuart Monroe some comfort, I suspect if we build too many houses, it will get to overload even with smart motorway. So I will be doing some work on this connection, particularly using some of the data from the smart motorway work assessment, because they emailed me because I asked them about a particular site in my ward, which you will all know about, and I said, have you taken this site into account? And they said, we've only taken into account sites that were planning permissions up to 2014. They've put some general growth figures in, but they haven't taken into account any large sites that we might have in our local plan refresh. So I think there's some quite serious problems associated with the M4, and my colleagues and I will be doing work in connection with that. The other piece I wanted just to bring to your attention, I was attending the Berkshire Local Transport Body that met this evening, and I'm pleased to confirm, just report back, that funding from the LEP, from the OP of the Winnersh Relief Road, the second phase, which I know is of interest to a number of Liberal Democrats as well as colleagues on this side, the Armfield Relief Road, which I know Gary's particularly interested in. There are cycle routes which I think go through Wokingham, the Thames Valley Park and Ride, and the Winnersh Triangle Parkway Station. All these projects are slated to have funding through the Local Enterprise Partnership, and so far they are on track. So thank you very much.
Norman, you've got 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Maybe you'll call me first next time. I just want to bring attention to a few things. Firstly, at the start of May, we began selling compost made from recycled garden waste, including waste from RE3, at the household recycling centres. We weren't sure how well that would go. We started with a stock of 2,000 bags. It proved to be very popular and was sold out by the first week in June. So next year we plan to make the link between the waste from RE3 to the compost stronger than it was this year. The our waste definitely in the compost, and we'll get a larger stock, so it's very popular. The RE3 partnership was awarded the best use of design and technology in the waste management facility at the prestigious Let's Recycle 2018 Awards for Excellence in Recycling and Waste Management event. The panel of judges recognised RE3 for its efforts to increase the amount of waste that is reused, recycled and composted, especially noting the recent investment by Wokingham, Reading and Bracknell councils and FCC Environment in the material recycling facility at Smallweed, enhancing the recycling capability to take pots, tubs and trays. The Willow House Hospital School was inspected by Ofsted And the report they sent afterwards was very complimentary about the quality of education provided. The reason I'm mentioning this is they included comments about the use of the library service. So I'm going to read a small part of the letter from Ofsted to the school headmaster. Teachers promote reading very effectively by making the most of the award-winning local library service. The school's own library was skillfully changed. Can I finish this sentence, please? Thank you. The school's own library was skillfully changed to engage pupils, especially those who had read poorly prior to admittance to the unit. So as a result, more pupils read much more widely and more effectively. So it's good to see such comments about the work done by the library service. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, members. We're moving on to number 30, which is statement from council-owned companies. Who would like to do that? Anthony Pollock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I enjoyed working with Stuart Rowbottom, who was the last person to hold the sole gas role, and I think to some extent we've slightly missed having somebody specialising in that role, and I see Julian nodding, who had the role as the executive member, and I think he and I both worked well with Stuart. So I welcome the opportunity to work closely with the new DAS, who, as Prue said earlier, I do know, though, and I think that she will be a very good appointment, and I look forward to working with her to ensure the services officers provide to Woking and Borough Council the best that they can be, and that they improve year on year. Thank you.
Okay, item 31, members' question time. Again, you've got 2 minutes in which to answer your questions and no speeches, please, with your supplementary. Gary.
Can the executive member for the new local plan update me on the current progress, especially in relation to how many houses are being planned for and where these houses might possibly go? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for your question. As you're probably fully aware, the council is assembling the necessary evidence to support the plan. Spent a couple of months looking at that, and we're still looking at all of the 270 sites that we've had submitted, and most months another few get added to that list. So this includes looking at all the land promoted in the local plan process. And at this stage we have not chosen or committed any particular approach or sites to managing future development. All options remain on the table, looking at all the things we can do. In the context of housing numbers, we expect the government to introduce a standardised methodology for calculating housing need across England shortly. This has been sadly missing for a long time. We start with the objectively assessed need, and then some formula is applied, and there's lots of interpretations of those formulas. They have promised us that will be sorted shortly. This intent was first indicated in the Housing White Paper Fixing Our Broken Housing Market in February 2017, with a draft methodology proposed as part of the consultation Planning for the Right Homes in the Right Places in September 2017, which obviously didn't work. Ministers have indicated that the standardisation methodology, we've had this confirmed in a couple of cases and as late as this afternoon to one of our officers, will be confirmed alongside updates to the government's National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, before the summer parliament recess, i.e. by the end of next week. And so I think until such time as we get to see what that is, then we're not going to commit to any swarm of numbers, and then before we go to the consultation process.
Gary, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Stuart. I attended an IMD on last week, which you signed off, and in that the document says the Berkshire authorities will use their best endeavours to meet the full OAN numbers. Now that's the existing numbers. There was an appendix to that document from Chiltern and South Bucks district councils using words I've never ever heard a council say to another council, and that is an unsound approach to plan making, and is preventing at worst, hindering at best, essential duty to cooperate discussions across East and Western HMAs. It goes on to say this is considered to amount to a failure across Berkshire in meeting its duty to cooperate for a key strategic planning matter. In the light of what the leader said in this welcome, and over 3,000 residents have signed petitions designed to protect our green fields, what action are we actually taking in this authority to fight our corner instead of just acquiesce to the government's point of view?
I totally agree with you, but unusually.
You signed it.
Eric. I think, Gary, I totally agree with you. I mean, the reason for South Bucks withdrawing from the housing market assessment area, as you know, was that they didn't really want to participate in the process and take all of the houses required for slab. So, and they preferred to align themselves with Buckinghamshire. I think the wording that they used in their notes is unfortunate, and I can totally assure you that we will not be doing nothing to tell anybody about what we are supposed to do.
I'd like to ask the executive member, what are the species of animals found in the wild areas? And if they are counting them, I'd like to tell him that my cat, Hancoast, has dispatched one of the mice. And my dog has acquired about 12 ticks and about 8 fleas. Would you like them back?
Good enough mice or anything.
That's fairly easy to answer. I wondered where they'd gone. Checked the inventory at the end of last week. During 2014 and 15, the Council undertook reviews of grass cutting. There was a public consultation, and the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee, on 5 occasions at least, considered evidence and made recommendations during contract re-tendering. The policy of allowing certain areas to grow longer while others were cut shorter was established during these various consultations. I don't remember any real dissent at that time. Since establishing the long grass areas in 2016, we've aimed to strike a balance between improving biodiversity and maintaining open spaces for residents to use for recreational purposes. Therefore, the Council undertakes grass cutting in locations and areas important for recreation use to ensure that there is sufficient land available for this purpose. You asked what species we're encouraging, so here we go. Longer grass is good for invertebrates such as grasshoppers, bees, butterflies and moths, particularly where it facilitates safe overwintering. Other invertebrates such as ants, leather jackets and beetles are often in greater abundance in areas not subject to intensive mowing. These in turn feed birds such as starlings and green woodpeckers, mammals such as shrews, voles, hedgehogs and bats, and in turn these small animals are prey species of birds such as kestrels and barn owls. Where we leave the grass to grow long in our parks and open spaces, this also helps provide space for ground nesting birds. Flowers that are allowed to set seed provide an important food source for farmland birds, for which there is great concern over declining numbers. We have received a number of compliments for this approach. However, if there are specific areas where you feel the grass cutting regime is not correct, then send me the details and we'll have a look at it. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary?
Well, some of my residents would also like to return some of the rats and mice and a few other things that seem to be acquired from these areas as well. Where would you like them sent?
Happy Street.
Back where they came from, I guess, really.
Okay, Lindsay Ferris.
Ask the question in my name.
Thank you, Lindsay. I agree that the grass cutting hasn't come up to the standards laid out in the contract, mainly due to a late start, due to a very cold March and then a very wet April. However, whilst the weather did play a part, the main reason was that the first cut took far too long, with some areas having to wait up to 7 weeks, which did lead to many areas looking unkempt. However, areas that were cut first did look better than in previous years. We're currently reviewing the resources on this contract to see if they're appropriate to deliver the required standard, and can confirm that officers have been putting pressure on Tivoli Group if we took over ISS Financial Facility Services to see how we can improve matters. There has been improvement due to extra resources being brought in at no extra cost. In addition, as I highlighted to you previously at the time you put in the questionnaire, the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee will carry out a review of grounds maintenance contract, which will start on the 1st of August. Thank you.
Yes, just a quick one. I'm pleased that Overview and Scrutiny are looking at this. I think people's inboxes have been pretty full. Certainly in May and June it's been a lot less because of the weather. But when we have a review, would this review include completely looking at the contract with the potential of stopping it if we aren't happy with it?
It's up to Overview and Scrutiny what the scope of their review is. So on the 1st of August, I'll certainly be there and the officers, so we can answer any initial questions, and then it's up to Overview and Scrutiny to decide how to proceed from there. Okay.
Please can you advise exactly how much the Wokingham Town Marketplace has cost so far, and could there be any more costs to come?
Thank you, Imogen. As I recall, this is the same question you asked the Town Council. But anyway, in terms of the cost to the local taxpayer, the answer is zero, because this investment in the future of the town is funded entirely by developer contributions, including S106 and the Community Infrastructure Levy. The overall budget is 3.8 million plus contingency, which is split 50-50 between the Woking Borough Council and the Woking Town Council. We'll not know what the final cost is until we've concluded the contract, because there will remain an element to resolve, which is normal for a contract of this type.
You a supplement?
I do indeed. I read in last week's Wokingham paper that Woking Borough Council will commission a review of the project once it is complete. My question is, why are we waiting for the project to be completed for this review, and where is the funding for this review coming from?
What an excellent question, and it gives me the opportunity to confirm that I've asked for an independent audit of the entire project from the concept to the conclusion, and I've also asked that it starts before the project finishes so we can talk to everybody who is around on site.
Where's the money? Where's the money coming from?
I understand there is sufficient budget within highways to pay for that. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Workers at Wokingham Town Centre businesses are struggling to find available spaces in affordable, conveniently located parking in the town centre. This is having a detrimental impact on the local businesses. A very affordable and flexible town centre staff parking scheme at, for example, the Carnival Hall multi-storey that you're promoting people use could help to address this issue. Will you create an affordable and flexible town centre worker parking scheme for the duration of the regeneration programme works and beyond?
Thank you for your question. Town centre regeneration, I understand, is well on its way to completion, with the marketplace being completed shortly and Peat Street being completed probably by Christmas. However, I have some sympathy with town centre lower paid workers, who I assume is the group that you are concerned about, and I will therefore review the situation.
do you have a supplementary?
Just to say thank you, that's great.
Philip?
So I'll stand to ask my colleague here the question in my name, please.
I was executive member when this road was first mooted and put it into the local transport plan, I think somewhere around 2006. And at the time had an idea that it would be a distributor road, i.e. that it would have a reasonable speed limit to it, not necessarily 60, but certainly a reasonable speed limit. And if it's possible to keep it at 40, then I will do so.
Do you have a supplementary, Philip?
Yes, I hope that's very much the case, as the indications I've had from officers is that they're looking more at 30 than 40. I would hope that that can be carried through, because I think it's important we can keep the flow of traffic up at a reasonable pace, and we also ensure that those clearways are unrestricted. Thank you.
Thank you. I think if this road is to fulfil its function as a distributor road, which I intended to be a route that traffic, particularly from the Winnersh Relief Road, would choose to use rather than come through the town centre, then I think that the speed limit has to be reasonable, otherwise people will not use it, and the town centre will clog out even more.
4 miles an hour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Has the council had any contact from Reading Borough Council on the subject of the East Reading Mass Rapid Transit Scheme, which was refused by the Planning Committee on the 25th of June?
I'll be answering the question since it relates to planning. Thank you for your question. Yes, I can confirm that we have had contact from Reading Borough Council, and hopefully by means of your supplementary I'll be able to elaborate.
Maybe not. I know that they've intended to resubmit the application. The capital costs of East Reading MRT has been set at £24 million in 2016 prices. £19 million of that comes from the local enterprise partnership, leaving a shortfall of around £5 million. How much of that £5 million will be paid by this council?
At this point in time, there's no valid planning application. So until a new application is made, we don't know the details of that application. Reading has made it very clear that they recognise Wokingham members, including yourself on the planning committee, had valid criticisms of the scheme, and they're proposing to try and address those criticisms and come back with a new scheme. Until we see that new scheme, I don't think it'd be wise to speculate as to what the likely cost of gadgets would be.
Thank you very much. And well, that's all the questions. Members, we now move on to 32, which is all matters, questions. There are no supplementaries. Hands up, who's got a question? Okay, thank you. Quick, how long standing? Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. According to the Wokingham paper, Labour has stated that WBC, Wokingham Borough Council, X the previous 19AC bus. However, Reading buses are controlled by Labour Reading Council, and therefore that is outside the control of Wokingham Borough Council. So can I ask the executive member to clarify what the real facts are?
Thank you, Shahid. Reading buses have a habit of underbidding for bus contracts, and then about 18 months later they turn up and threaten to withdraw them unless we pay them more money, which is